Since your spec will control most of the aspects of your piping in your model, this is pretty important. So let's take a look at where we can get these specs and how we can choose it. You can always set the active spec that you're using from this pull down right here. And if you notice, if you go to the pull down, right now we have many specs located and loaded up into this project. So we can set any one that we want as the active spec. Now, if we need to add more specs into here, we can go into here and we can copy additional specs to the project. I usually keep a folder with all different specs in it. And if there's a spec that you do have missing, remember you can go out to the Autodesk Exchange right here. And in the Autodesk Exchange apps, you can get additional specs that may be better suited for the project that you're working on. All right, so another tool that we have is called a Spec Viewer. Now, the Spec Viewer will allow us to see exactly what's in the spec without going into the Spec Editor. Because remember, going into the Spec Editor is going to involve bringing up another program. So you do have the tool called the Spec Editor, and it's in here in the part insertion palette of your home tab, and you can just type in Plant Spec Viewer if you wish. So as you can see, this looks exactly like the Spec Editor, of course, without all the extra tools. But what it is, it's going to allow you to see what you have going on in your spec. Okay, so if you wanted to go into a part like this, you could highlight this elbow, and then you actually have further choices here. Now, if you don't get enough space, you can always pull this open and give yourself more space. So what you can do is you can highlight on that, and let's say we want to work with this 3-inch 45-degree L, and with all the specs that's on it. Now what we could do, we can insert it into the model. So all you have to do if you do that is just to go ahead and place it into the model wherever you want. Let's just go ahead and zoom so you can see, of course, and then as normal, use your compass to locate where you want it, or snap. Of course, you wouldn't normally have a elbow just out in space, but that's demonstrating how you can put it into the model. Now, you can also, if you activate your tool palette, we'll just go with the shortcut of TP for tool palette. And right now I'm going to switch my tool palette to a 3D working environment one. I'll go to the Plant 3D. And let's go ahead and create a new palette. And I can call this one Elbows. And then I can add that tool to the tool palette here. Okay. Now you can also create a tool palette. And if you notice, by creating the tool palette, it's copied everything that's in that spec into a current palette. So that gives you some pretty good options without having to go into the Spec Editor. And don't be afraid to use the Spec Viewer as your tool for placing the parts, because many people find it as a more effective than just using tool palettes.